in 2012, United Nations conference, Rio Plus 20 conference, 2012 said that, okay, by 2015, since MDG will expire by 2015, we need much more, bigger, overarching, much more encompassing kind of global development agenda, and we'll agree to that by 2015. Let's agree to that. So that was agenda in 2012. So we are hoping that by 2015 they will come up with the SDGs, right? So, and also fortunately they did, but in the run-up to 2015 SDG adoption, which happened in September 2015. Before that, there were so many activities. For example, how do we cut this cake is very important, right? How do you cut the cake of Sustainable Development Goals? In which direction we should kick in? And there are a lot of lobby, there are a lot of consultation. There are a lot of people worried. They wanted to enforce certain area. To tell you the truth, I was also engaged in some campaign to have cities as a standalone goal in SDG. I was engaged with the Sustainable Development Solution Network, SDSN, which was established by Jeffrey Sachs at Columbia University. So I was working with the urban group. We were trying to create some kind of campaign or create the case that urban or the city should be a standalone goal in SDG. So that time I spent a lot of time, preparing documents, doing some knowledge-based campaign on need for cities to be a standalone indicator in SDG. That was quite interesting. That time I remember even I went to the Rockefeller Foundation retreat in Bellagio in Italy. So we drafted some documents there, staying for a week, for the city as a standalone goal. So that's just an example. What I'm trying to say is that there are a lot of things happened in the run-up to the SDG on how to cut this cake, right? So what should be the goal? What should not be the goal? How the areas we did not cover in SDG goals need to be covered? How encompassing and what should be the bottom-up process so that everyone buy? Unlike top-down coming from UN, putting some number, how to make it truly organic, coming from the bottom up. So there are a lot of efforts there. And good news is that, we had SDGs by 2015. But as you know that for any UN system, they have a processes. For example, even when the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change was set up, usually they have a negotiating committee, they have a small working group, they prepare a draft, then they share the draft to the countries, to the parties, then they agree to the common drafts. There is some protocol. So similarly, here you can see in the slide that in 2012, they agreed to set up the process. Then 2013, the General Assembly of UN set up a 30-member open working groups to develop a proposal on SDG. And that working group will interact with different level, with all sphere to really come up with a proposal. Then in January 2015, the General Assembly began negotiation process on the development agenda. Finally in 2015, we could adopt so-called the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And that came up with 17 goals at its very core, but it has many targets, right? And the targets would operationalize the goal. The goal will be expressed in the form of targets, right? And the targets need to have a very clearly doable numerical, targets, indicators, right? So we call it goals, targets, indicator. So three-tier system evolved for SDG. Now this is a declaration. If you are interested in the declaration, I have put the link here. If you click the link, you can go to the website where you can read the declarations made by the country, the declaration text. And there 195 countries agreed, nations agreed these goals and targets for 2030, right? Now, as you can guess, lots of effort was needed to come to the targets. What should be the target for 2030? And I asked you the earlier question, you can always ask the question, saying that, are those targets was good enough target for us to become sustainable, right? Are those goals right set of goals, or did we miss anything, right? Or whether targets are good enough, whether we need more relaxed target or we need more stringent target. So anyway, there was a lot of deliberation, discussion, and that was a compromise. In a way, this document is a compromise document, right? Because you have to agree. 195 countries have to agree on these goals, and these targets. But good news is that we did it. And now, if you look at SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, there are 17 SDGs goals. And if you remember our earlier MDG, they were only for poor nations, developing countries. If you look at those 8 indicators, 8 goals of MDGs, they are very much primary health care, primary education, maternal health, child mortality, and even the bigger aim like environmental sustainability really didn't go that far. Only access to the pipe drinking water. We are operating there very different domain there, only for developing country, poor country. But now SDG is for everyone. Now, if you look at the lineup of the 17 targets, the first is to eliminate poverty, right? So no poverty. So that is a one. Second is hunger, zero hunger, to erase the hunger. Third is the good health. That means we need to establish the good health and well-being. Now, of course, then we have a challenge. What do you mean by good health and well-being, right? Then, okay, this is a goal, but what is target? Then what is the indicator? Numerical indicator, which is measurable. We need a measurable, verifiable indicator, right? There's a huge challenge to do that. Number 4, provide the quality education. Number 5, enforce gender equality. 6, improve clean water and sanitation. 7, affordable. The SDG 7 is for energy, right? Affordable, grow affordable and clean energy. Number 8, create decent work and economic growth. 9 is industry, innovation, infrastructure. 10 is reduce inequality, because the inequality is very important, right? Because otherwise, if we just measure the world by the big numbers without understanding the differences and inequality, then that's not a fair society. So reduce inequality is very important. And the 11, actually, as I said earlier, that I was also engaged in some of the campaigns for goals 11, mobilize sustainable cities and communities, right? So basically saying that making sustainable cities and communities is very, very important. 12, responsible consumption and production. 13, climate action. But you know that this has to go in harmony with Paris Agreement and so many other agreements. Then we have 14 as a life below water, mostly marine ecosystem, water bodies, and also the advanced life on land, right? Then peace, justice, and strong institutions. These are very, very important aspects. And 17, partnership goal. What kind of partnership we can build, how developed and developing countries should collaborate, how the international organizations, governments, civil society, and the citizens need to work together. It's all about building partnership. Without building partnership, reaching these goals are very difficult. But also please understand that there are lots of these goals, and there could be the situation that goals could conflict with each other, isn't it? Let's say if we say that improving energy access. Now, energy access can be improved by providing electricity produced from the coal. But that will cause air pollution and that will cause climate change, right? So that means we need to provide energy access with the clean energy, but not coal. So there are similarly, there could be lots of, synergy and potential trade-off, and we have to understand, and we have to find the approach when we work at the operational level. So in any case, these 17 goals, people can still say that, it could have been framed differently. People still can say that maybe some area needed more attention than the other. But anyway, this is what was globally agreed, because at the end, we can't make everybody happy, and we have to come down to some kind of conclusion, right? So good that we come down to these 17 SDG. Now, if you look at really 17 SDG, there are social aspects, there are economic aspects, and there are environmental aspects. Of course, in this particular paper, they try to put SDG 1 to 6 as a social area, and 7 to remaining 12 as 7 to 12 as economic area, and remaining 5 as a environmental area. But in reality, they are all interconnected. So I mean, social, economic, environmental, they have a lot of interconnection. But still, the basic approach works around social issues, environmental issues, and the economic issues. Some people view that societal and economical systems should be within the environmental system, ecological system. So actually, it's not a 3 circles, but it's a 3 concentric circles, where outer circle is ecological, environmental, then the inner is social, and then economic. So economic system need to be built within social system and within the ecological limits. So that's one way. Sometimes we call that as a strong sustainability, right? And sometimes this interaction between social, economy, environment, and we try to optimize it. Sometimes people frame that as a weak sustainability. So there are lots of such principles. But in any case, we cannot be only tree hugger only, right? Because after all, economic growth is needed. Economic systems are there. We have to work around it. We cannot be fanatically green. If we become fanatically green, it becomes not implementable. So we have to be realistic. We have to bring society, because economy is very important, because economic growth is needed in order to bring people out of poverty also. So we have to really synergize, harmonize many things. And I think this is quite a reasonable way to go forward. But of course, these things can be looked from many different perspectives. Yes, we have an issue of environmental protection. We have an issue of social development. We have an issue of economic prosperity, and we need to balance all these things. But also, we are looking at the biodiversity problem, looking at the climate change problem. We cannot think just now. We have to think about future generation also. These Brundtland commissions, without compromising ability of the future generations, we have to address that. So the today's generation, future generation, cost of action, cost of inaction, time horizon, all these things are enshrined in this thinking. And also, these principles should not be only global. It should be implementable at the national level, at the provincial level, at the city level, at the neighborhood level, right? So we have to really phase in. So this kind of principles goes not only environmental, social, and economic, but also across time horizon, across local to global, and also across the different agents, from the government, business, society, science. So it needs to really build a greater partnership. And that partnership is something tried to be enshrined in goal number 17, but that partnership is very important when we try to implement this at national or local or our neighborhood scale. That's why SDG goals and targets are very integrated targets. They are indivisible, and they are global, and they are universally applicable. Unlike MDG, this is not for developed country or developing country. This is for everyone. That is one distinguished feature. And also the targets are defined as a aspirational and global, which also provides lots of flexibility to contextualize that in the national context, so that each government, each level of governance can decide they have enough room to provide some flexibility and decide how that aspirational and global targets should be incorporated in their national planning process and the strategy. So there is a lot of flexibility. There is some room there, but of course there is challenge to translating, because after all, these principles of SDG need to be streamlined into the national planning process. For example, many countries have 5-year national plan. For example, some countries don't do 5-year national plan, but some countries have 5-year national plan. So how to streamline SDG goal, SDG target into the planning process? How to mobilize your investment strategy? How to mobilize your scarce resources? Now that need to be mobilized to meet those goals and targets enshrined in SDG. So how to build your capacity? How to align your institutions? Maybe you have to align your institutions so that institutions are efficient enough to deliver the goals that we have set forward. So as you can see that international ODA, international financial assistance, will be also mobilized, channeled towards achieving SDGs. So this will really set lots of things into the motion to really galvanize support and also to reorganize ourselves at our national or the local concept. That is the aim. Since MDG time, we learned and we appreciated these goals, targets, putting some tracking system and putting some numerical values, right? So now there are tracking frameworks available. You can track the progress towards SDG. The countries are developing numbers, databases. UN organizations, even statistical units are changing their direction so as to provide enough data, enough information to track the progress of the countries of the and the globe towards SDG targets and indicators. You can look at some of those targets, indicators in more detail there. Not only tracking, but the target itself. I'll only give you example. You can go to the link, and you can know about goals, targets, indicators, for all 17 goals. But let me give you example of one particular goal number 17, because many of you are somehow deal directly, indirectly with the energy, right? So goal 7 is for energy. So SDG goal 7 talks about ensuring access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, modern energy for all. Now, if you look at indicators, target, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They have more 5, targets under goal 7. Now the target 7.1 is by 2030, ensure universal access to affordable, reliable, and modern energy. Now, what do you mean by the universal access, right? Universal access of what? It's called modern energy services. Now, this is defined in your indicator 7.1.1 and indicator 7.1.2 down there. When you say by 2030, ensure universal access to affordable, reliable, modern energy service, it is talking about proportion of the population with access to electricity, right? So how much percent of the population has access to electricity? That is the indicator. Now, even they have defined, okay, which agency in UN system would report this data? And the data custodian for this is the World Bank. World Bank does the tracking of this particular SDG indicator. They have developed the tracking framework. Now, the second indicator is it's not only electricity. What about cooking, right? Two major focus of 7.1 is access to electricity and access to solid fuel for cooking. So access to clean energy for cooking, because still access to electricity has improved a lot globally, but access to clean electricity for cooking is still a problem. How do you define affordable? So at this moment, we only look at population with access to electricity. Now affordability, affordability, accessibility. There are a lot of other dimensions, but at least here, our idea here, at least the indicator put forward is access to electricity, which look primarily on percentage of the population with access to electricity. But of course, we can always argue, what do you mean by the access to electricity? How much electricity is access? Just you have a one light bulb in your house, does that define your accessibility? Or you need to be able to use the substantial amount of electricity? So, you have all these debates, all these debates. So you can explore some detail. Anyway, what I'm trying to share is that under goal 7.1, two indicators are access to proportion of the population's access to electricity and the proportion of the population with reliance on clean fuel and technology. And that particular data and indicator is tracked by WHO, World Health Organization. Then under 7.2, you can see here, so the first one is the access, right? And the second one is renewable energy. That access has to be cleaner now, right? Now for 7.2, of course, it's relatively easy, right? So how much percent renewable energy share in the total final energy consumption? So that indicator really defines your target 7.2. Now for target 7.3, doubling the global rate of improvement in energy efficiency. Energy efficiency means here energy per GDP, right? So if you look at 7.3, it talks about indicator energy intensity measured in terms of the primary energy and GDP. And the data custodian here is International Energy Agency. But the renewable energy data is custodian is International Renewable Energy Agency. Similarly, for indicator 7.A, target 7.A, the indicator is about international cooperation. Now, the tracking is done by how much money flows to developing country to support for the clean energy research, development, and energy production, including hybrid system. And that tracking data is done by IRENA, International Renewable Energy Agency. And the last indicator is about by 2030, expanding infrastructure and upgrade technology for supplying modern sustainability for all developing countries. So here the indicator is investment in energy efficiency and as a proportion of GDP and the amount of the FDI, foreign direct investment in financial transfer for infrastructure. So they have come up with some of these data, but still, you will find that many of the data is still not available. Of course, energy is relatively easy, but out of this, 17 SDG, under the 17 goals, then you have targets and indicator. Still for many indicators, there are data does not exist in some country. So still, then even to track the SDG, we have to improve our data reporting system also. And that is itself is a big task, but the countries are working on that. SDG has been appreciated, but also there are criticism against SDG, right? So can you think of any criticism, like from your understanding what SDG may not be able to do? Of course, it's in the slide if you have browsed the slide. But okay, there are several things which are either we can define as strength, and also there are some flaws. Now, strength, as I mentioned to you earlier, is that it's an ambitious agenda, because although it's not legally binding, we can actually, since it is not legally binding, you can actually set more ambitious target than what is told here also. And also, you can make, even though you don't achieve targets, you can move into the positive direction, right? Well, somebody can say that as a weakness also. Then there's a collective agenda. This is not an agenda of developing country, but the collective agenda. Everybody has bought this agenda. Universal, right? There is no us and them. Then also there is a specific commitment to end poverty, and then they have a lot of overarching commitment to reduce inequality. Inequality has caught quite a strong attention in this whole debate. But there are a lot of people who are still not very happy with the SDG. They say that, okay, fine, SDG, but it's not enough. It doesn't go too far. Our sustainability challenges are huge. SDGs is not enough. They say that extreme poverty, we can't wait to remove poverty. Waiting for poverty to be reduced by 2030 is too late. We have to address poverty now. We have to be more ambitious. Some argument. Then some people say that the goals are wishful thinking and unattainable. And some people even say counter argument that, well, eradicating poverty by 2030 is almost impossible. It is a rosy picture. Or some other people say that there is not enough instruments available. If we want to really eradicate poverty, then we need more strong support from developed countries. We have to pay more attention to the inequality differences, not only growth, but the differences. So a lot of people say that, okay, nice, but it's still difficult. A lot of people say that actually the support base is not very strong. As I said earlier, it needs a lot more funding. It needs more, they say that for poorer country needs much more stronger support. For developing countries, still the support base is poor. It needs better financing and technology transfer. And also it needs very strong political will, and that political will may not be there in many parts of the world. Some people say that there is huge difference between rich and poor, and these basically SDGs favor the rich minority. So that is one criticism. Then others say that these goals are still top down. Well, during the formulation of SDG, unlike MDG, SDG was much more bottom-up process. Some people say that we don't have enough support base to meet these targets. There is not enough funding. The technology transfer mechanism is not very strong. Financial commitments needed more, and also it lacks very strong political will. Some others say that it basically favors rich. Some people say this is still formulated with a very strong top-down approach, bureaucratic, and one size doesn't fit all. Some people say that SDGs are wishes, not goal. Since they are not binding, there is not enough incentive for governments to work towards it because it's not legally binding. Some people say that there's a lack of data. It's very difficult to, really measure, particularly issue like poverty, and there are multiple definitions of it. And some people say that there are few big elephants in the room are left unaddressed. For example, how do we measure the poverty? Still, this $1.25 per day is low. We have to raise that bar. Otherwise, we might be happy saying, oh, we eradicated poverty, but not really. So that benchmark is too low. Some people say that we ignore trade regimes in this whole discussion. Some people say that we need a strong regulation on financial institutions and the banks, and the SDG has shied away from the issue of trade and the issue of the financial market regulations, which is needed, and the issue of the debt, which is very important for developing country. So anyway, these are some of the major points of criticism. But once again, when you make such a global goals and target, you really cannot make everyone happy, right? Because you have to cut the cake in a certain way. But definitely there would be always interest group who can try to sway the goals and targets in their favor, which is geopolitically and from different perspectives, this is not very unusual also. Now, so I just want to ask you which one criticism you found something struck your mind. Do you agree with this criticism, or how is your feeling?